Okay, now we are recorded. I need to change the template of the recording to make sure that everything what is important is on the screen. Today we have a special lesson because it is a lesson dedicated to recall some basic information. I try to be precise, to provide you information, to recall you information that it's that could be used, could be recognized as a knowledge that you need to pass the test. Next week we have test, and the test will be conducted during this seminar in the same hours on the same lesson. But we'll start our lesson at Teams, and the test will be conducted using the VCamp. Today I'm going to talk about the information versus data. By the way, let me ask you the question. Today is very good moment. It's a very good opportunity to collect activity points, because most of the questions have been already asked. So it is just, I think it's easy. So the first question is, can information be a direct subject of computation? But it is related to the first point, information versus data. Next, we talk about the architecture, application architecture, program architecture. I'm going to recall you some basic information about object-oriented programming. I know that some of you have some background problems with this topic. Next, there's a few points related to the language itself: anonymous type, delegates, events, generics, extension method. But all of that are required actually to discuss the most important things related to the technology we learned during these classes, related to serialization. Recall me that serialization we are applying against the stream of bits. Language integrated query, that it's used to manage data in the external data repositories in general. It could be SQL databases, relational databases, but in general, we can use this language construct, language term, or language idea concept to get access to an external data repository. Next, we'll talk about the partial types and methods, but I think this point will be addressed earlier. Next, technology, presentation layer, MVVM. It's related to the third data form. I mean, it's graphical data. But I think it's important to ask, what is data? What is data? Yes, in most cases you answered no. It's true. Information cannot be directly processed by the computer, by the physical machines, because it's abstract. So do you remember that? I hope you remember that we discussed this example where we have left side and right side of the equal sign, and the question if the left side is equal to the right side. Of course, depending on the layer, if we are lying about the lexical terms, so left side, it's completely different than right side. So it is this equal sign. It's not corrected here. But in case we are talking about the meaning of the left side and right side, it could happen that left side is equal to the right side. My question for you is, what is external data? If we know what is data, next ask what is external data. So if we are talking about the meaning, left side and right side could be a number 4. But numbers in general are abstract. So on the next slide, you can see that the number is like a ghost, but it has representation, physical representation inside of the computer, and depending on the language or independent of the coding system, we can use different encodings to represent the same information. So information is single, for example, number 4, but representation could differ. In this case, we talk about languages that has binary alphabet. Binary alphabet, it's alphabet that has only two characters. Next question. Today I'm going to ask you many questions. So the next question for you, it is, what is a computer program? I think that's all. Today you have your active mics, and so you can switch your mic on and ask question directly. If there is something that you don't understand, just ask me. I think that it's also possible that we'll spend the project in day that we have test to address some questions, provided you send me proposal for topics or for questions. So program. What is the program? What is programming language? Next question for you. It's what is programming language? Discuss all of that. A computer program. We recognize two states of the computer program. First is design time, and second it's run time. And now we are talking about the design time. Of course, after compilation, after linking all the parts of the program, we can. It's possible that the operating system or any system software will get the compiled program and load the program inside the memory, starting from the first statement, from the first instruction. Depending on the language, depending on the development environment, the first statement, the first instruction could differ, could be more or less manageable, depending on and it may depends on the developer. But usually the program at design time, we are organizing using the layers. So what is the layer? What is the layer? What is the layer? You don't know what is the programming language? Programming language is three things. First is alphabet. Second, it's syntax. Syntax is a set of rules that we can apply to test if the characters from the alphabet are coupled together, making a correct text. Usually, we are talking about programming language as a text, but it's also possible to use the graphical language. It's also possible, but we have narrowed and talked only about only the text. So the layers. What is the layer? And next question: can we use two-color references in layered software? Because usually the layer is organized to group part of the text. Of course, we must group the text using appropriate syntax. It is useless to group the text just using random rules. Therefore, we must provide some rules. This triangle that is in the background It is informative because it provides information where we have a top and we have a bottom. Presentation is on the top and the data is on the bottom, because between the layers we have dependencies. So the presentation layer can use only the logic layer. Logic layer can use only the data layer. Using today object-oriented programming languages, for example, like C#, Java, and others, we can organize layers as a set of types. So we can group types to sets, and this set could be called as a layer. But we can, after definition of the layers, the rule is that there must be a relationship between layers. If there is no relationship, top-down relationship, we can forget about layers. Of course, the program must cooperate with the external. Can we, next question for you? Of course, today we don't have time to discuss all of the details. Can we still carry references? Of course, it is possible. Of course, it is possible, but inside the layer only. Inside the layer, this question, you must be careful about the question, can we use the circular reference in layered software, but not in the layer? Between the layers, of course, no, because using the circular references between the layers, we don't know which layer is above, which layer is below. But inside of the layers, of course, we can. It's possible. So it is layer. Layer is a set of types, and organization of layers is that the type above get access to the type. Use types in the layer below. Now let me recall you some questions related, some topics related to project object-oriented programming. But I will provide you, because object-oriented programming is not main topic of this. It's out of scope, actually. Therefore, it is the information I have for you is general. But first, I must run appropriate. Code. The code is in TP repository. TP repository is on the GitHub, so you can download this TP repository. Now I'm opening on the second screen the text. The examples we are discussing are collected in external data management solution, but maybe it's time to switch the screens. And it is not required. Excuse me, there's too many screens, too many possibilities. First, let me switch, stop sharing the screen. And after that, again, but it is not stop sharing. And I must call the application from the beginning. Okay, full screen. Now it's this screen. Here we have questions. But the question I put on this, my second screen, external data solution, it's this one. What its type? It was the previous question. Have you answered this question? What its type? Just only one person knows what's type. I expected that all of you knows what the type is. Okay, but here you can see the code from the example solution, and now we are inside the class that calls language C#. As I said, it's out of the scope of these classes, but still it's very important for the rest, because I know that some of you have some backgrounds. um, so let me recall some basic terms and basic constructs in context of the object-oriented programming only. If you have some problems and you are Polish speaking guy, you can use my ebook. It's not ebook, it's actually video course. But if you are not Polish speaking student, it's difficult because it's only in Polish, so you must translate it. But in any case, you have any problems, just let me know. First, the most important thing here that we have abstraction. Usually, abstraction it is hiding some implementation details. So we are, for example, here we have abstract class, but additionally we could also have interfaces as the abstraction, and in the interfaces we don't have any implementation of the members. But in this case we have only method declaration, only one method, but the method, the definition of the interface doesn't provide implementation details. Therefore, asking about the functionality of the interface, we can say the information is not that the interface doesn't provide any functionality. It provides only definition. So behavior depends only on the implementation. So it's abstraction. Here it's abstract class, here is abstract is interface, but still it's abstract. Next, to implement abstraction, we can use inheritance. So we can derive from the base class or from the interface, we can derive a concrete class. Concrete class, let me recall it, is class that could be instantiated. So it provides all the details that we need to create objects. Of course, there is special case where we are talking about generics. Generics is not abstract, it is not abstraction, but still it is the type with parameter. So all the parameter also must be defined to make the concrete definition. But we need concrete definition to instantiate the class. It's possible to use dynamic programming. So forgot for a while about the strict type definitions in this language, but it's only possible using the reflection. So class and constructor, it's not important. Here it's hermetization, so some members could be private, and if it's private, it's not visible outside of the definition, outside of the class or the. In the interface, it's impossible to use the private definition, is not to use hermetization, because everything that is inside interface must be implemented. Implementation here, for example, we have a method, and this method is implemented. Even if you are throwing an exception, still we must recognize this method as implemented, because implementation means that we must provide a block defining a sequence of statements that must be executed. Of course, during the runtime, calling of this method could cause exception, but in design time, it's perfectly okay. It is just implementation. So we can call language C# class as a concrete one. During the inheritance, we can override, so we can provide next layer and change, if it's possible, change functionality or even replace functionality. But replacing functionality and changing up functionality is exactly the same, but replacing functionality is broader concept, but still it is implementation. Anonymous types. Any questions? I can see. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand and switch your mics and call me. If you probably because I expect that you could have simple questions, so let's postpone this question to the last project. If there's any problem, just join me during the project before the test. Of course, the group that starts after the test, it's too late, but it is only the first attempt for the test. Remember that you have 3 attempts, and if you don't pass the first attempt, you must try again. But if you have passed the first attempt, you might try again. It's up to you to try again, for example, to improve your scores. Anonymous type unit test. Anonymous types is a type that has no name. Actually, no name, but still it must have a type. So I'm trying to find where we have assert inconclusive. Where is definition of the anonymous types? Let me recall. Object is of course not anonymous type. It is basic type that all other types derive from object, but still it is not anonymous. So probably we have anonymous, but not in unit test. Just a second. I must copy it here again, and there must be anonymous time somewhere. Anonymous types. Okay, we have anonymous type here in the unit test. Anonymous type. There's many possibilities how to define anonymous type. Let me recall that here it is expression as usual. On the right side of the sign of the assigned character, always it is anonymous, but this type is defined by inline during creation of the value. So we are creating value, and the value is assigned to the variable, but the type is assigned to the value. Therefore, the rest of the code we could use, for example, to check compatibility of the type. So the new assignment to this variable is tested against the compatibility with the first type. So var, it is a keyword that we are using to in all of the places where we must deal with the anonymous types. Anonymous type. What is next question related to the type? Because we haven't answered the question what the type is. This is simple type. And okay, so let's I must skip the rest of this the question because actually I have answered this question. So var it is concrete type, but because the type doesn't have any name, it has name, but the name is only known by the compiler and the execution environment. We don't know the name, therefore we can use the name in front of the variable, but the name is established, is created, and the type is created. The type is not and we cannot change the type using the rest of the code here. There's many possibility how to define the anonymous type, so you can review this anonymous types unit test. It is good place where you can learn more about anonymous type. Next is delegate. It's very important for communication because it's related to the layered applications. So maybe I ask you the question, what is delegate in the language terminology? What is delegate? Delegate. But here, delegate examples, it's over here. So for example, can you see that here we have a delegate word, keyword, and the rest looks like as a header of the method. And actually it plays similar role because every part, including the return type and list of the arguments, the syntax is exactly the same like in case of the method. The only difference is that perform calculation here, this identifier means a type, Okay, next question for you to make sure that you are not getting sleepy. Of course, it is not only answered that that delegate is a type. The answer to the question is delegate is a type. From this line, we can learn it, but from this line, we can also learn that this delegate type is used in front of the variable. So the variable that is of the delegate type, we can also call a delegate. Additionally, we can also call a delegate a value, provided that this variable in this line 33, we are assigning a value. So this value could also be called a delegate. So we have three delegates terms: type, variable that could that we can assign all the values that are compliant with the delegate type. But as usual, type is set of values, possible values that we can assign. And the second is set of methods we can apply, we can use against these types. As usual, the type is always the type and has these two parts, two sets, set of values and set of possible values, set of possible of operation that we can apply on these values. In case of the delegate, the values actually are set. So the value of this variable could be set of the delegates, set of the values that we can use to call the method. For example, for example, here, perform calculation, we have a delegate, it is variable, and we can just call the method from this that we can call this method. And actually we can call all this method, but here is invoke, providing appropriate parameters, and provide appropriate parameters according to the definition. And after that, of course, we can apply to the return value. In this case, perform calculation. Returns integer. Therefore, we can get value or default as the integer here. Describe the difference between delegate and the event. What is the difference between delegate and the event? Next question for you. You're getting sleepy because I can't see answers from your side. All of that you can expect during the test. Therefore, I think it's very important to you to understand everything. Here we have an event, and actually event is a keyword, but I'm not asking about what is the keyword, because the keyword is just the keyword. But the line here, 22, we can recognize as an event. Because, so here it's keyword, here is an identifier, and in front of the identifier we can see the type. Pick definition we can use to make sure that it is delegate. It is delegate type. It is similar situation where we have here we have a variable with the delegate. Here we have variable with a delegate. So probably we can remove this event from here. Yes, it's possible. And it doesn't provide any errors because still it's delegate. Event is delegate. Sorry. What is the difference? Let's go to the generics. What is generic type syntax? As I said, it's good opportunity to get activity points because all of the question already I asked. Therefore, it is I am answering this question again. Therefore, if provided that you are prepared to the test, you should answer all of this question. Therefore, if you can't answer the question, take care about it. Be careful because you could have problems with the test. Event. The only difference between the event and the delegate is that we can call the method associated. Actually, it is reference to the method associated. Reference to the associated method assigned to the set as a value to this variable. The only difference between the delegate is that event that some operations in the type in the delegate could have a private prefix. It is not possible to use this operation outside of the class. For example, calling the methods, it's calling the methods and clearing the set, because the set can contain many items. Therefore, we can recognize the operation clear a set. So it's impossible outside the class, and also calling is impossible because this operation are private inside the class where the event is defined. So inside this class. Okay, so let's go to the generic solution. Next question will be related to generic. Generic you can find, for example, in the notes. Here you can see, for example, the class that has a parameter. So answering the question was the generic type syntax is, but before answering, I see that no one knows what the parameter names, what is the meaning of the type parameter. So from the syntax point of view, the generic type is just type with the parameter. It's type with the parameter, and the type could have many parameters. So here we can provide type second and type third and so on. Of course, it caused the problem. It could cause the problems because here, where we are referring to the type, we must refer to the concrete type. But now it is not concrete because the parameters T2 and T3 have been not assigned yet. But there must be a sign to make sure that we are talking about the concrete parameters. So it is type with the parameter, meaning is that the parameter is still type. For example, this type could be used in front of the property here. Usually here we are using the type, but instead we can also use the type parameter, because we know that after creation of the node, the type must be concrete. To be concrete, it must be first, because it's abstract. It must be we must only create derived type that is based on this type. First, second, all the parameters must be defined. Therefore, we can in all of the places assume that the type is provided. The same is with the generic method. Generic method you can find in the next class, generic method here. For example, it is also the method with the type parameter. So it is, of course, these arguments could be recognized also as the parameters, but they must be recognized as the runtime parameters. So we must assign a value while calling. Calling the swap, we must provide two parameters. But for the generic method, to use the generic method, when we, for example, using the swap, we must provide appropriate type. Find all reference. Maybe I can find a type. Oh, there's no type. Anyway, if you are going to use this type, this method, you must provide in the code the name of the type to make sure that the method is concrete. Actually, the most important thing is that the type is concrete. In this case, the method is concrete, but still we can use this type in any places where the type is typically used. So it was next file, next example refers to the file stream. Therefore, before I will move to the appropriate place in the code, answer to the question, what's the file, using the language terminology. In many places, in many cases, in many questions, I am adding that that my expectation is to answer in terms of the language. Frequently, you are using generic terms, or you are describing something, but we have language, we have appropriate, precise language. So in terms of the language, we can answer all of these questions. So file example, I try to find the file. Where is file example? File example you can find here. It's file example. File. Of course, the answer is that it's class. Okay, but previously I asked about the file and meaning of the file in terms of the language. And F12 could be used to open the definition. What's wrong with this? Not sure. Go to definition. As you can see, the file is a class. The file is the class, but it's static class. Therefore, we should not use this term as a generic term that must replace the term of the file, because in the operating system, using the operating system, we can get access to many files, but static class cannot be instantiated. Therefore, it must represent something. It is I think, similar approach as a singleton. Singleton is a pattern, and we are using this pattern in any cases where we need to represent something that it's single. So next question is what does file represents? It is the same question that previous. So forgot about it. What is the stream? This next question. What is the stream? Is the stream? So file represent the operating system file system. File system. Here we can find typical operation provided by the API of the operating system that we can use to open the file. Open text, for example, here we can see, or here is just the open part. It's the name of the file. In terms of the operating system, not sure if it's if you have answered the question, but in terms of the operating system, file is a stream of bits and metadata. Stream of bits and metadata. So path is one of this of the value of the parameter of this metadata. It is not only the identifier of the file, but additionally it also provides information how to find the file in the file system. Sometimes file system is distributed, so the file is located on different computers in different places of the network. Therefore, we must provide additional information about how to find the file on the network. How to prove that we are dealing with the stream of bits, read all bytes. For example, it returns array of bytes. So we know that if path it is identifier and location of the file, from this method we can get all the bytes. But it's similar to the file system. It is not represent, as I said, files is not representation of the file, but stream of course is. After calling, for example, open, we are getting a stream, and actually stream is representation of the concrete file. Therefore, on the stream we can apply instance methods F12. For example, we can find or read read byte, or there's for example read, that we that this operation could be used to get bytes to the buffer. Additionally, we provide offset and how many entities we are going to, how many bytes we are going to read. And additionally, we can get back information how many bytes are we have in this buffer. Anyway, it doesn't matter how it works. The most important here is that the stream. What the stream? What is the stream represent? Semantics. What is the stream meaning? What does stream represent? What is the meaning of the stream? Actually, I answered this question, but interesting if you're following me. Okay, you are not following me, so wake up. Next question for you is, what is the main purpose of the file open operations? 3 words. The meaning, as I said, the meaning of the stream is stream. Stream is over here, but I need to file example. As you can see, we are opening file, and so we are creating a stream, and this stream actually represents the file. It represents, so the meaning of the stream, it is representation of the file. It is just a file. And we can apply to the file, to the selected file, we can apply many operations, including reading. But what is the reason to open? Open actually creates first we must, because the file is provided by the operating system, so we must have appropriate rights to get data from the file. Therefore, first operation executed by the open is authorization and authentication. Authentication, it is to check, to provide credentials for the user, that are going to open. Actually, the user, it means operating system and session we have with the operating system. This name is provided as the identity of the user, and the next a session is created. Session, it is not session. Actually, the file is locked. So it's locked. So we are creating. Open creates critical session around the file to make sure that the data in the file is consistent, to prevent a situation where the design file is modified into places in the random sequence, so the contents of the time is not consistent. But here we can use using keyword. What is the using? What is the using construct? What this using in terms of the language? Of course, I am expecting. Here we have keyword using. Here we can recognize that it's variable with type. Next is assignment. So this part we can recognize as assignment statement. Of course, on the right side of the assignment, we have expression. So the expression is executed, and appropriate value, the object of stream, is assigned to here. So what is the using in this context? Next question. I can see the answers, your answers, and anyway, there's more. Next question is, what is the function of the using function? So what is the meaning? Yes, you are right. Using is a statement. It is complex statement because inside of this using we can execute these statements, these instructions as a part in this sequence. So here we have a block, and this block provides the functionality that it's executed actually against or using this variable. And next question for you. Enter a condition to select the file and not a database as external data repository. Here we are opening the file, but we can also do the same with the database. So we can open the database, connect to database. So the question is, what is the reason to use the file instead of the database, or use the database instead of the file? What is the meaning? First meaning is that after opening the file be closed as soon as possible. If if the stream should be file, in this case, is represented by the stream. So we can close the stream as soon as possible because the rest of the application or other computers, other people are waiting to release the critical section that we have created against this this file. Of course, using it is visibility scope. Therefore, after the using here, for example, we can not get access to this variable. It's not visible. It's not visible, but so it means that if it's not visible, we don't need this variable. It is not just to something like encapsulation, something like filtering, something like hiding. The most important thing it is to say what for us means that the file should be closed as soon as possible. So after leaving this block, we can say that it is good point to close the file, to release the critical section. And what happens? Of course, stream must implement idisposable. Go to definition. Idisposable, and idisposable provides only one operation, dispose. Therefore, using is a statement that calls dispose after leaving the block. Doesn't matter if you are living inside in any instruction, in any statement inside of the block, or if you are living, for example, at the end of the block, if you are living by exception, doesn't matter. If you are leaving the block, the using is responsible to call this dispose. What functionality is provided by the dispose? Of course, as usual, is abstraction. So it is interface. Interface doesn't provide any functionality. The functionality depends on the implementation. Depending what we are going to dispose, where the implementation is, the functionality is provided by the implementer of the class. Here, stream is abstract. Therefore, it is not necessary to provide implementation here. The implementation could be provided in the class that we create. The class deriving from the stream. If it's a file, we can close the file. If it's, for example, network connection, we can close the connection. If it's something else, we can do different things. Usually, this operation we call that we are releasing we are releasing resources. Okay, next it is serialization. What is serialization? Let me ask you. What is serialization? What is the condition? The condition is multi-use. If the file, if the data, usually, not usually, always, the data is stored, so we can fetch the data from the external resources, external data sources. And if the resource must be multi-use, we can use database because the database provide appropriate functionality, appropriate support multi-use. In case of the file is just one whole. So in case of the in case of the databases, we are using SQL. For example, if it's SQL database, we are using SQL queries to fetch the data from the database. In case of the files, we are getting just the stream. It is not necessary that we can read the whole stream. It is also not necessary to read from the database all the data in all of the tables, for example. But in any case, database protects multi-use. But in case of stream, the multi-use is not protected. What is serialization? Next question was what is an object state? Because the question is answered the question. Okay, I try to find self-control serialization. Self-control serialization is the next class that it's important for you because here we can find examples about serialization. It is serializable class. Serialization is an operation that is executed during the runtime. So during the design time, we only describe behavior of the serialization. But in all of the cases, we can say that serialization is conversion of an object state into the stream of bits. In case we are using text serialization, for example, XML or JSON or custom type, but based on the alphanumeric alphabet. In all of these cases, we are also converting to the stream of bits because to finalize, to serialize a state of the object, we must convert into the stream of bits. In case of the text, we can convert to the text, but the text must be assigned encoding, UTF encoding or ASCII encoding. Any encoding, doesn't matter what the encoding is, but the encoding must be precisely defined for the text to make the stream of bits a text. If you are talking about the text, and if you are talking about the computers, and if we are remembering that computers only are using binary alphabets, therefore we must convert to the stream of bits. What is the state? Maybe next question before answering this one. Oh, I expected that you will be more active, but there's only few answers, but it's up to you. Actually, it is activity points could improve your scores. Therefore, I try to to press you to be active to answer the question, especially in case where we are talking about the same thing many times. So the state is a set of values. Set of values. For example, here it is a get object, and this get object is responsible to for serialization, and it get access to the values important to be converted to stream of bits. Usually, if you are talking about serialization, we are thinking about deserialization. So if you are serializing an object, we are thinking about a situation where this object, this stream of bits, must be converted back to the object in the same language or in the different language. Doesn't matter. But it is main reason why we are talking about serialization. There is additionally two reasons. Second, it's to send the stream of bits over the network. It is next example, next scenario where the serialization is required, because over the network we can send only the stream of bits. Next one is to display something on the screen. Also, in this case, we need serialization, especially in case that the monitor, that the screen is a remote screen. If we need to send the data to the screen over the network. So it's serialization. Maybe next question. Next question to check if you are following me. It's not something that we talked many times, but additionally answered this question previously. So it must be easy for you to answer this question. When does a bit stream becomes text? When does a bit stream becomes text? So skip the question about the signature. Now go to the link. I still have a few minutes. Link. Now we are opening the structural data, because link, it's very good example. But I promise to talk about the extension method before the link. Okay, so let's talk about it. I need to change my agenda in a dynamic reason. What is the extension method in the context of the syntax rules? So in context of the language, but remember that language has syntax and semantics. Syntax means that it's rules describing the correctness of the text. But semantics means rules that we are using to apply a meaning of the text. So associate the meaning of the text. But now it is extension method. Where is that extension method? Maybe this way. Extension. Oh, there's a lot of extension places, but in extension method here I can see the class. Extension method in terms of the syntax. But now let you ask, what is the extension method in context of the semantics rules? What is the extension method in terms of the semantic rules? So in the syntax rules, we can see that it is extension method, and it's a static class. So it must be static. It must be static method, but first parameter is prefixed by this keyword. So in case we have a static method inside of the static class, we can provide this in front of the first argument on the list of the arguments, and this means that it is extension method. What is semantic? What it means for the method? I think it would be clear in context of the next question. What is the difference between usage of the extension method and the static method? From the syntax point of view, the extension method is exactly the same as the static method. There is no semantic differences. It means exactly the same functionality, the same definition, the same. Everything is the same. Except, of course, usage. And next question for you before answering. Can we call extension method if it overrides instance method? Be careful, it's tricky point here. Can we call extension method if it overloads instance method? Because answering to the previous question, we can use the syntax to call the extension method. We can use the same syntax as it is for the instance method. Where is an example? An example we can find, for example, split here. Okay, maybe where it counts, I should find it by find all references. Probably it is in this, okay, in the unit test. Word count and even is extension methods, and extension method, to make sure that you can see it, let me put it on the screen below. So first we have word count, and second we have even method, and both, as you can see, can be used exactly the same way. So they are using the same syntax as calling the instance method. Word count and even are not instance method, are static method, but still we can use to call it using this syntax. Okay, I think that it's everything. Let's go back to the link, language integrated query. First question for you, it is, what is for each clause statement or something that in terms of the language? What is in terms of the language for each? For each. I am pretty sure that you must know what it is, but let me check. Structured data, link to object, catalog, and there is something that we have partial class, and this partial class is divided between this catalog and the class, not class, the text that is auto-generated after selecting go to definition, we can see that we have two definitions. Of course, we don't have two definitions, but the partial classes are merged by the development environment, by the Visual Studio, and creates one class after compilation. So, according to the language, against the language, both parts are the same class. But for each, for example, we have here, and we are using for each. For each is loop, not loop. Loop is not term of the language. What is the form class? Klaus surely answered this question, but you missed it. What is the form class in terms of the language? It's the same question. Okay, forgot about it. What is the return from the query syntax? Not sure if you can see this. Query syntax. Query syntax, it's filtered by person. Probably you cannot see it. Let's find it. Where is query syntax? Catalog query syntax is link syntax method. Here we have also the for each, and query syntax is the next method. So what is returned from this method? Here we can see that it's a variable, it is array, and it is link, a language integrated query syntax, query syntax. And here it is, we are returning something from this query syntax. For each statement, it's not loop, because in terms of the language, we don't have loops. Of course, it is iteration in the context of the general programming terms, but in terms of this language, it is for each. But next question. Okay, doesn't matter. What is important here? Let me explain. It is the most important thing for this example is difference between the statement. Here we have a statement, and here we have expression. So the difference that here is a statement, here is expression. The functionality is more or less the same, so we are getting actually the same result. We are getting the same result from both, but very important thing is here, because this expression, comparing with typical expression in natural, normal, standard expression is language, it is not executed. It is converted to an object. It is translated to an object. So at runtime, this variable contains not the value, in this case, set of values, set of strings that start with G, but it contains only the expression. The expression is executed over here, where we have a selector, and this selector tells that we need to call toArray. Of course, toArray, it's extension method. Go to definition. As it is extension method, so actually the compiler converts this expression, this line, and actually calls this toArray, providing as the first actual parameter, actual arguments, the value that is in this variable. toArray is aware only that this variable implements IEnumerable. It is the only knowledge toArray has about the value. Therefore, The first thing, go to definition, that must be done by the to array, it is to call get enumerator. Of course, let me get back to the question, what functionality is provided by the get enumerator? It's interface. Therefore, we don't have any functionality here. The functionality must be provided by the implementation, but where the implementation is, of course, because we are using something like words, the implementation is provided by the runtime environment. But still, to array is not aware about uh, about this, that the value of this variable, it is an object. Precisely speaking, it is expression tree. It's object that implements that it's that has type expression tree. But for you, it is not important. For you, the most important thing is that this type must provide enumerable implementation. If the implementation is provided, to array calls the get enumerator, and the get enumerator provides any functionality that is required. In this case, we have language integrated query to object. But in case language integrated query for object, but in case we have similar solution where we have catalog, and now we are dealing with at content. For example, here first filter person by last name. Here it's also a syntax query. Maybe I need to ask you next question, because I see you are getting what terms defined in the context of the database must be mapped on the program constructs. There's six entities that must be mapped. Terms that we must be aware, talking about the SQL database, about relational database, but that must be mapped on the program. Because in the program, we can deal only with the construct that are compliant with the language. Therefore, there must be something like mapping between database and the program. So here we have exactly the same thing, that this expression is not executed. It is converted to an object, and this object is returned. So actually we don't have any real values fetched from the database. But going to the find our references, I think that here we can see that I'm calling this method with this parameter, actual argument, and the result is assigned to this variable. This variable contains object that refers to this expression. It is expression. In these two lines, you can find proof of concept that it's just expression. What is mapped? Information about what is mapped you can find in the code generated. Here it's auto-generated. The information about the mapping is provided by the attributes. This attribute means that the catalog data context represents the whole database. Next, attributes, for example, table attribute means that person is class, but it represents a table. It is coupled together with the table. Of course, the table provides many values, but here person, it provides only value for the one row. Here persons, we can get persons as a table, so we can select only rows that are important for us. Therefore, we can recognize language integrated query as a construct, as a construct of the language that we can use to select the data from the external database. Select first and apply operation to the selected values. Comparing with this, with the applying, with fetching all the data from the database and applying all the operations to all of these values. It doesn't work. So fetching all the data from the database doesn't work if we have problems, for example, with memory or with time. With the database, it's a remote database, it's located far away, and we need to fetch all the data. It could take time, and sometimes it's not enough. Okay, so it is database connection. Database connection is provided by catalog data context, because the constructor of the catalog data context here, for example, provides a connection string. So here we are using the standard or auto-generated connection string, but using this constructor, we can provide any random, any custom connection string and connect to any database. But when the connection is created, it is created as last as possible, so it's postponed until the connection is really required. Therefore, we cannot recognize constructor as the place where the connection is established. To finish the connection, we can call, go to definition, we can call, as usual, dispose, that is provided by the implementation of iDisposeAble. Okay, I think it's all about the language integrated query. Implementation, method abstraction, partial type. Partial type, we discussed about the partial type. Remember that partial types, it's just one type. So if we have two parts, the parts are merged. Therefore, there must be the same language to be merged, and they are merged by the compiler instead of merging by, for example, repository, GitHub repository or Subversion repository. Next is MVVM. An example of the MVVM you can find in the last folder, graphical data. As you can see, it is, I'm only talking, and today I'm not trying to explain. Today it's only, I'm going to provide you hints where you can find appropriate examples in the code, in the example code. Of course, understanding of this code, it's up to you. And actually, to be prepared for the test, you must understand the code I've just pointed out in this during this lecture. So next, it's MVVM, is graphical data. So graphical data is data that it's built that contains pixels. So it is built from pixels, exactly like in case of streams, but streams is like a vector. So we have only one dimension. In case of the graphical data, we have two dimensions, at least two dimensions. And additionally, all of these members could have many values, because usually today pixels could provide information about the color. But to help this using of this graphical data on the screen, we are using MVVM, model view model. So I don't waste more times to ask you questions. There's any question about there's small. Okay, I return to the question after finishing my discussion because I have only a few minutes. So if you have special question, I think that we should address this question during the consultancy and during the project. Again, graphical data could be handled by a technology. In this case, we are talking about the MVVM, where the model view model is a pattern, is layered pattern. We have three layers. We have view that is responsible to gather the graphical data on the screen, to manage the data, to manage the screen. View model that provides functionality of the user interface, graphical user interface. And third, the model. And the model actually contains the data that it's required, only for the managing of the graphical user interface only. Therefore, we must not we must not treat model as the rest of the program. It is independent layer, and as usual, layers are types. Presentation contains only type that could be rendered on the screen, that has graphical representation on the screen. It is as a rule, because it must be coupled together with appropriate technology. MVVM comes from the Windows Presentation Foundation. Windows Presentation Foundation was a framework providing functionality to manage graphical user interface in the context of the Windows operating system, modern operating system. But today, this technology is ported to any others platforms. Additionally, the most important thing here is communication between the layers, because sometimes we need to inform the view that something happens, for example, in the view model or in the model. Therefore, we are using delegates and we are using events. I think that's all I can say today. Let me get back to your question, because I can see. Okay, so maybe that's all for recording. I switch off recording for now.